are live here on our YouTube channel. It is the Audible preseason watch list, 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on this show. The NFC West and the Arizona Cardinals, which means Kyler Murray, which means excitement bloom, which means Cliff Kingsbury and air raid and run around. Now, here's the one problem with Kyler Murray. Everybody's already on this bandwagon. Everybody is already ready to go. His current average draft position, I think it's quarterback 8 or quarterback 9, Bloom. I don't have it in front of me. I will get it while you're chatting.
Yeah.
That is the max value. I mean, unless we're going to be number 1 quarterback. Like, I don't think we should say that. Or top 5 quarterback. Like, okay, a quarterback 1. He's a running quarterback. Their defense is terrible. They're going to be throwing the ball all over the place. Like, yes, we can all see it with Kyler Murray. Everybody does. But you're not getting any sort of value in a year where this is the year to wait on QB. Let's talk about the little guy, Kyler Murray.
Yeah. And I will present a counterpoint, Cease, only on this front. I have him as quarterback 4 in my current rankings. Just put tiers out and put some comments on my rankings at footballguys.com. But I'll say this. It reminds me of Cam Newton. I don't remember. What did Cam Newton finish in his rookie year? Like top 3, top 4, something like that. I mean, he was a league winner partially because you didn't have to spend that kind of draft capital to get Cam Newton. But I think that we haven't seen something like Kyler Murray in the NFL before. And the reason is because of the air raid and because of the love affair between Kingsbury and Murray, where Kingsbury has felt with conviction that Murray is the ideal quarterback. So really, we're going to see a running quarterback who also keeps the entire field in play, even on the move, as a passer, given free reign to make things happen. Usually when the running quarterback gets up into the fantasy rankings, they're only throwing the ball 400 or 450 times because they're a running quarterback, and that's the nature of the offense. Kyler Murray could throw the ball 550 plus times. Tempo is going to be up. And also, the offense is going to have defenses on their heels. Defenses haven't really seen anything like this, at least since college, and certainly not with NFL quality receivers, as Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald. And then we'll see who emerges. Maybe Keyshawn Johnson. We'll talk about that later in the segment. A lot to talk about here. I've waxed poetic and rhapsodic about the possibilities here, but Patrick Mahomes is going to be quarterback 1 unless he gets hurt. Kyler Murray can be quarterback 2. He's right there with Deshaun Watson in terms of ceiling. Deshaun Watson needs his guys to stay healthy, and he can be right there too. Because also you mentioned an important point, C's game script. This is a terrible defense, and they're missing Patrick Peterson for the first 6 weeks of the season. So high tempo, bad defense, everything running through Kyler Murray, who's been given carte blanche, free reign to run and go. It's going to be interesting to see how defenses respond to this offensive scheme early on. We saw it with Chip Kelly, though. It takes the NFL is lumbering. They're slow to adapt.
It's like turning around a aircraft carrier.
Right, right.
Take some time.
I mean, there was a year that the Wildcat was something they couldn't figure out. Now, eventually they did, but for that year, the Wildcat was successful. So I think that making an aspirational my quarterback philosophy drafting is this. You want ceiling. You want somebody who has a chance to be in the top 3. And you want someone that it's not just about finishing in the top 3. It's that if you're finishing in the top 3 with Watson, assuming he stays healthy, and Mahomes, assuming he stays healthy, that might be a 3, 4, 5 point advantage per week on average over the pack at quarterback, which is, hey, if you're getting in VBD terms, that's an important advantage. Kyler Murray can do that. Kyler Murray can be the aggressive passing and running quarterback in an ideal scheme for his skill set, with a coach that wants to coach and call plays and design plays to his strengths on a team with a bad defense that's going to be playing at a high pace, as high scoring as any team in the league. Of course, could also be a disaster, but here's the good news. Even if you reach for Murray, you're just taking him, the 6th or 7th round? I mean, you shanked your 6th or 7th round pick. Your season is ruined. No! And that replacement level 20-point a game quarterback on the waiver wire is going to be there. So maybe you disagree with me and it's not Murray, but you should be reaching for the stars at quarterback this year. That's what the Cardinals did when they took Kyler Murray.
Well, the nice thing is quarterback's so deep, Bloom. This is where my mind goes, because we'll kind of disagree a little bit on Murray. Low end QB1, I don't see him as a top 5 guy. But anyway, quarterback's so deep, it's like I'm still going to get a solid backup anyway. Right. And Murray's going to have those weeks. We should find out soon, but you do mention Chip Kelly. So I will go back at you. The NFL's seen this before, not necessarily the Mike Leach version or whatever, but they've dealt with air raid before. Okay. Is the learning curve a little bit shorter? Does the league have it figured out? Like almost as soon as they try it, does the air raid move totally bomb because the NFL has seen it before?
It's possible, but I think this is going to be a pure air raid, and whatever they see in the preseason is not going to be what they see week one. And I still think it will take a while for them to catch up, because they're going to have to study. I think there was a good piece. I think maybe it was Mark Schofield. I'm not sure who did it. I'm sorry. On Iowa State's defense. Like, there has to be an entirely different approach to defense, and the way you think about defending an offense when you're defending this offense, because it isn't necessarily route combinations and timing. It's spacing. It's a quarterback. And this is what's so beautiful about Kyler Murray being at the helm. Because if the quarterback understands it and the receivers understand it, then the defense is going to have to adapt. I mean, maybe during the game we'll see defenses catch up, but I think it's more over the course of a season and having an off season to study it. And the other thing that I think is important to note here, Cecil, it was, I believe, a Charles Robinson piece who said that even when Kingsbury was headed to USC, Bill Belichick wanted to talk to him. Sean Payton wanted to talk to him. NFL coaches know, the good ones, they know this is coming. They know the wave is coming.
Well, we've seen it before already, because what McVay does with spacing, and here's how it's different from college football. There's no wide hash mark. There's truly no wide side of the field. So what did McVay do? McVay used formation. He used tighter formations to artificially create a wide side. So again, Bloom, it's exciting and it's fun, and the NFL's archaic and super conservative, and they're slow to respond.
Yeah.
You're totally right on all those things. Football doesn't change. They just sprinkle in little things. They try to change some things here and there. They try to do things a little bit differently. They are artificially creating wide hash marks like college football by bunch formations, tightly bunched. And then, of course, the jet sweeps and the motions you see with that. The end, Vic Fangio figured it out.
Sure.
Bill Belichick figured it out in the Super Bowl.
And this is going to be a fertile topic all year, so I don't want to turn the Arizona episode into the Kyler Murray debate or air raid debate.
Are we going to talk about the backups? No.
Right? No. Well, Brett Hundley. I mean, but look, I'll just say this. The other thing is, if you look at how Bill Belichick figured out the Rams offense, some of it was going against tendency, which Sean McVay was in Jared Goff's ear trying to tell him, okay, they're showing this is what's going to work. And then when they would change, or when they would go against tendency, or, vary, where usually when they give this look, this was the coverage and it was another coverage, and Goff would, like, smoke would come out of his ears. The difference here is that's all going to be in Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is going to create the structure as he goes. Kyler Murray is going to be given the blank slate, the canvas, and he has the running ability, the arm talent, the creativity and boldness. And some defenses, there's probably 3 or 4 times a year that the Arizona might just get embarrassed, because it's just not ever going to get off the ground. But I don't think there's going to be a key to crack. And if you just know this is what Kingsbury is going to be telling Murray, he's not going to be telling Murray what to do. He's going to set up a situation where Murray will have a chance to author the play. And that, I think, is going to make it hard for this to be solved, assuming Kyler Murray is going to be as good as at least the Cardinals think he'll be.
We've spent like 8 minutes on Kyler
I know. Well, it's one of the biggest stories of the year, one of those fun stories of the year, and it's going to be one of the most. It's whether it's a spectacular failure or a spectacular success, it's going to be one of the most entertaining parts of every NFL Sunday.
Well, this could change the direction of the NFL.
Yeah, it will.
Honestly,
no matter what the DNA
if it falls
of this
on its face, it won't.
Right? But I don't think that's
NFL if it falls flat.
Even the Chip Kelly stuff, and Chip Kelly fell on his face as a GM, not as an offensive mind. If Sean Payton and Bill Belichick, before Kingsbury was even in the NFL, wanted to talk to him, to say, I want to pick your brain, I want to understand this. These concepts, so one of the things from the book, I think, is The Perfect Pass, the Hal Mummy book. So one of the things from the practice that we saw, Cease, was they've got 5 people throwing to 5 different receivers simultaneously. And the receivers are all releasing at the same time and settling down into their spot at the same time. And so it's getting the timing and the spacing done in a way that it's starting to think, again, We think about offense in terms of route combinations and distorting defenses this way. This is an entirely new way to think about it. And I think the fact that it continues to proliferate, the other thing I think we're going to see proliferate, Cease, is dual threat quarterbacks. And I think we have something similar going on in Baltimore where coaches are finally going to be willing to embrace a running quarterback as an 11-on-11 threat, as a runner and a passer, not just as a runner to make a strong running game and occasionally pass to keep the defense honest. I think you're going to see more of those college concepts, the way the college game is played, bubbling up. And it's coming one way or the other, partially because more players that would have been written off as NFL quarterbacks, now that Kyler Murray's an NFL quarterback, now that Lamar Jackson is an NFL quarterback, more players that didn't necessarily get a chance to be developed are going to be developed, and then they're going to be in offenses that suit their strengths.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
It's hard to find traditional pocket passers, especially when college football doesn't groom them at all anymore. Bloom, I don't want to talk about the backups. Yeah. All right, let's move on. David Johnson up there next. Woo. Now, what's he going to do, right? And he's ready to bounce back. He's ready to have a big season. We've already seen him do it before. You're thinking shorter passes, plenty of looks as a runner. Game script might not go that way for the runner, but David Johnson provides some more excitement, Bloom. But you know what we're going to get? We're going to get fantasy GMs who are like, you burned me last year. Burned me. Won't do it again. Burned.
No, don't fall into that. Don't fall into that because, look, in the background, this offensive pie should be much larger this year. A lot more to go around. David Johnson 2018 was the largest case of malpractice we've seen, Cease, I think, in the whole time we've been doing the show. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Run him up the middle, not splitting him out wide, not getting him into routes, not getting him downfield. Ugh, Mike McCoy, smartest guy in the room, just ask him, right, Cease? Mm-hmm. So David Johnson's an incredible talent. Cliff Kingsbury doesn't really have a specific MO on offense. He's going to mold around what he's got. David Johnson is what he's got. After those top 5 running backs, top 4, see, there's a Freudian slip. Because David Johnson, we could see 2 or 3 weeks into the year say, well, David Johnson should have been going in those top 5. And he is going 5th in a lot of drafts. I think he's an easy choice, 5th or 6th. And I'm looking at David Johnson or Travis Kelce or your favorite wide receiver as those guys to fill up 5 through 8. But you could be the whole story of this offense could be a disaster. But we could also see 2 or 3 weeks into the year that everybody, remember the Chip Kelly years. Remember the first Chip Kelly game against Washington. We're like, oh, I'm glad I drafted an Eagle. I'm glad I drafted Deshaun Jackson. I'm glad I drafted LaShawn McCoy. I'm glad I've drafted Michael Vick. I think we could be looking at something similar, at least for the first half of the season for Arizona.
Well, let's look at the guys behind him. And you have to look at these with the air raid offense. And this episode's probably going to be like 30 minutes long.
It should be.
It's fascinating. Yeah. I cannot wait to see the Cardinals play. When's the last time we said that? Chase Edmonds, TJ Logan, which becomes very interesting to me, Bloom. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. DJ Foster is way more interesting because, again, you slap an air raid label and it's like, wait a second. TJ Logan could make some plays in air raid in space with his quickness, with his balance, his agility. Like all of a sudden now, and Chase Edmonds more of a traditional, classic guy, all around guy. I like him, but man, I think of TJ Logan. Let's throw in everybody here: Dante Strickland, Xavier Turner, Wes Hills. Like, okay, some running backs become more interesting in this air raid.
They do. They're all good receiving backs. They're all backs who have some downfield ability. Chase Edmonds, got a lot of James White comparisons that last year in the draft. So I don't think you're going to see fantasy relevance unless David Johnson goes down. But I also don't think you're going to see Cliff Kingsbury say, well, we're only going to use David Johnson. We'll mix in some Chase Edmonds. DJ Foster, again, a really good receiving running back. TJ Logan has some speed, part of that committee at UNC. So absolutely, I think that you may see a different roster construction. You may see this team keep 8 wide receivers, or you may see them treat these running backs as wide receivers that mix in, because this is a totally new frontier in terms of how offensive players are used. And the fact that we can see this pattern here, Cease, all excellent receivers, these running backs. So I think it points in the direction of a lot of passing, period, but passing to the running back too. So David Johnson, folks, don't worry.
Well, Larry Fitzgerald's already come out as we transition to wide receivers and said, quote, I've never seen a quarterback come in so quickly and being able to command an offense. He says from day one, he's out there checking the different plays, sliding the line to different protections, getting us in screens when blitzes are coming. His understanding of the offense is crazy. There's not smoke coming out of the ears. Jared Goff. This is Kyler Murray. And It's interesting and exciting. Let's talk about the big three at wide receiver because the backups are super interesting, especially a couple of the rookies. Actually, through all three of the rookies, the rookie separate segment, because I freaking love those guys. But Fitzgerald, Chad Williams, Christian Kirk, go time, Bloom.
Yeah, and I think that we have Christian Kirk, 6th, 7th round, but I don't think it's too aspirational to take him there. 100 catches, he could be an inside and an outside guy for this offense. I also can see him as a deep threat. I can see him as a run after catch threat. I think we saw Cliff Kingsbury try to recruit him twice. So Cliff Kingsbury liked what he saw in Christian Kirk as a prospect. Now he gets it in an NFL version of this offense. Fitzgerald's interesting. And I think that when we look at Fitzgerald, and I think it's really two. It's Fitzgerald and Kirk, and then it's wide open for playing time. And it's going to be based on who is doing the best picking up the offense. It isn't as important to be the fastest or the leap the highest, win at the catch point. It's important for you to be within the framework that this offense works in. And Keyshawn Johnson, has been the guy. Every day, the drumbeat getting louder about Keyshawn Johnson. They said that they saw him as the second best route runner in this draft. And when you think of great route runners, you also think of Larry Fitzgerald. So if that skill, because it's not running specified routes, but maybe that understanding of manipulating your opponent translates over to what they're asking receivers to do. So maybe we're overlooking Larry Fitzgerald. He could become a 100 catch guy again. I don't think that there's going to be any discrimination in this offense of we'll only throw to this guy a certain number of times a game. I mean, look, if this concept is putting defenses on their heels and there's Keyshawn Johnson or Larry Fitzgerald or Christian Kirk every time able to find that soft spot, able to understand this is how this defense is going to react. Maybe on the first series of the game, they'll be able to diagnose, okay, this is what this defense thinks is going to slow us down. So now we're going to be able to zig where they expect us to zag. And every play, Keyshawn Johnson sitting down there in an 8-yard zone and catching it. He can have 12 catches for 90 yards in a game. Larry Fitzgerald can have 13 catches for 100 yards in a game. There's nothing that's going to keep them from doing that. So any Cardinals receiver is an exciting play at ADP, because if this offense exceeds expectations the way it might, if we're looking for an offense, kind of like Kansas City last year, we're looking for an offense that could just blow away those expectations for number of plays run, total touchdowns, yardage. This has to be near the top of the list, if not number one.
Well, the guys behind him, you already mentioned Keyshawn Johnson, because he's been amazing, and he was amazing on the All-Star road trip as well. Certainly size, speed, strength as a route runner. I mean, seeing him and Deebo Samuel, like just going through my brain and seeing both of those guys, it's like one's supercharged, one's good and strong and a bully, Deebo, and then one's like supercharged version of that, because Keyshawn's got some bully to his game. Andy Isabella, everyone's going to see a white guy. He's not Nick Williams, okay? He's got the speed. He mainly played outside. He barely played the slot. They tried him at the slot. Didn't look as good as, let's say, a Penny Hart, right, at the Senior Bowl. But there's legit speed there with Andy Isabella. And then the big guys, there's the big guy, Hakeem Butler. You got that wingspan. You got that leaping ability. Let's do these three, and we'll save the rest of the guys. But, like, these three are the future of this team if they can get this offense.
And I think that right now, if I had to draft one, it'd be Johnson. And I would never have said that a month ago or even a few weeks ago. But you have Isabella, and the exciting thing about Isabella is the speed. And if you think of Kyler Murray, so in the background here, I haven't mentioned this. So if you want to say tap the brakes on this whole Arizona exuberance, it's the offensive line, right? Which at the very least, it should be healthier than last year. But I still think that this scheme makes offensive line pass protection less important than any other scheme when you have a quarterback like Kyler Murray. Because not only do you have to defend the whole field because of Murray's ability to arm talent-wise to keep the whole field in play, but you are much, much happier engaging with Kyler Murray as a pocket quarterback. You must rush. You keep him in the pocket and you keep him thinking. What you don't want him doing is getting out of the pocket and extending the play. And that's when Andy Isabella becomes exciting. That's when Andy Isabella sees we could see like 2 for 120 and a touchdown some weeks. He might only have 10 snaps, but if on 2 of those snaps, Murray escapes out the back door of the pocket because they come after him and Isabella gets behind his guy, it's over. Touchdown. So that's what's exciting about Isabella, but he's not running with the first team, but he'll be mixed in. Butler is inconsistent. He's having drops and he's having exciting, spectacular plays in practice. He'll be mixed in, maybe more in the red zone. Likewise, I mean, if this team is scoring in the 30s, then you could see every week Kirk and Fitzgerald being relevant and a third receiver sometimes being relevant. It could also be Keyshawn Johnson. And I think that there are, and then exciting names don't end there. And that's why I think it could be possible that this team finds a way to carry 7 or 8 receivers because they're all different. They all offer different things. And what will determine their playing time and whether they make the team is how they take to the system. And since there's one name that already knows the system because of where he played his college ball.
Right. And Andy Isabella, by the way, could be like John Ross. Don't get scared, people. I'm saying healthy John Ross. Because what Ross had like 21 catches last year, 7 touchdowns, whatever it was. Like that sounds like what Andy Isabella could do. Let's talk about the rest of the receivers then, Bloom.
Yeah. Yeah, and Kevin White is interesting here just because we know he's big and he's fast and he's got athletic ability. He just hasn't clicked anywhere, but he's back in the air raid scheme that he played in at West Virginia. So he's been getting some first-team reps. Trent Sherfield is getting some first-team reps. I don't really care who makes the team. If they get playing time, then I'm interested. Damiere Byrd, speed to spare. He's been mixing in there. The one guy who hasn't been is Chad Williams, who's been hurt. So the story might be coming to an end for him at one point, ticketed as one of the next great Cardinals receivers if they develop him the small school receiver. But this is a group, I would say we're paying as much attention in the preseason to this group of receivers as any in the league.
Yes, very much so. And an exciting time to think about what Arizona could do. Maybe not as much at the tight ends, Bloom. Let's just throw them all together.
Sure.
Because you already know the names. Ricky Seals-Jones, right? Charles Clay, they're kicking around. Hey, Max Williams is still in the league, right? But I'm more excited about those wide receivers.
Yeah, Ricky Seals-Jones is interesting because he's an oversized receiver. Charles Clay is very versatile, and I think you're going to see Cliff Kingsbury be able to use that if he can stay healthy. He's not right now. Max Williams, he may back into a roster spot. But he's versatile too. I think versatility is important here. So I think that we're probably not going to see a week in, week out fantasy relevant tight end. But if things go well with this Arizona offense, when you're getting your bye week injury emergency starter and Arizona tight end, whoever it is, those 3 could score you a touchdown on any given week.
Look at us wrap up Arizona in 22 minutes. Look at that. Yeah.
Professional.
See? Staying on clock. That's the job of a host, professional. It is Friday, Bloom. That's where I'm wearing my winter chicken dinner shirt because try to get a little PUBG in tonight. Although I'm reviewing Madden later today since it is a Madden holiday. Anyway, we won't tell you about our schedule. We'll tell you about the preseason watch list. It's 32 teams, 32 episodes. Every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on this show. And we brought them up enough. Do you know Sean McVay? You might be up for a head coaching job. The Rams and Sean McVay, after getting punched in the mouth, by the way, with Vic Fangio's defense in the Super Bowl, because Belichick just stole Fangio's game plan, after they got punched in the mouth, stomped in the face. How do the Rams respond this year? And is Todd Gurley someone you can trust? That is next. Well, so far, StreamYard seems to be going pretty good, Bloom.
Yeah,
right?
The reports in the chat room. Thank you, chat room.
Okay. Thank God the chat room's here.
Oh, you can see the chat room.
Yeah. Can you see the chat room?
I'd close the window so my poor old computer doesn't get too. I'm embarrassed. I'm revealing to the world.
Bloom has like an old MacBook.
Yeah.
And I've been trying for years. And I'll take us people behind the scenes. I've been trying for years, dude. Like I get like $300 HPs, and they're disposable.
Yeah, Well,
yeah. We'll keep the chat room closed because I saw this little circle a couple times, but seems to be going good.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience.
Yes, seems to be going good.
Especially you, Cecil.
I'm just waking up. All right.
Light and sweet.
Light and sweet, baby. 3, 2, 1. Well, the Rams got stomped and embarrassed in the Super Bowl where they could barely move the ball. Jared Goff and the steam rolling out of his ears. We talked about it in the last show, Bloom, with the Cardinals this year. I guess Todd Gurley kind of has to be through this whole episode.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we can't really talk about Goff without talking about Gurley. We'll save Gurley for his own segment, but how does Goff respond? How does he take those next steps? And I know there were some drop passes in the Super Bowl, right? And we're not going to base everything off one very important game. But it's like, all right, Goff, you needed to take that next step. He didn't last year. Does he this year? What does that mean from a fantasy relevant standpoint, especially when quarterback is really deep?
So that's also looming over this whole episode, right? So he says it wasn't just the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was part of a trend for this offense in the second half of the year. Some of it was losing Cooper Kupp. So here's some of the things you might say. Well, Cooper Kupp was out. Now he's back. Todd Gurley wasn't the same at the end of the year. Now he's back. And they add Darrell Henderson, who can be that Alvin Kamara, Chris Thompson like factor in this offense. So keeping defenses off balance, you're adding new factors that they have to account for. And Darrell Henderson is one. We'll get to him. On the negative side, there is the way that it looked solved. And Sean McVay has addressed this and said, like, he knows that he can't just keep doing what he's doing. I think I trust Sean McVay to not just sit on his laurels. I trust Sean McVay to not like exotic smash mouth this and just think, well, it worked. It's going to work again and evolve. They also have 2 new starters on the offensive line. So far, reports are positive, but, I think that they are going to be tested. And, that's going to be a way that inside pressure is. They're playing the Panthers week 1, Cease. The Panthers, KK Short, Gerald McCoy. Yeah, those new starters, they're going to be tested. All right. The Panthers might have the best front 7 in the league because also you're going to have Brian Burns at the edge there, Bruce Irvin. So this is certainly something to watch for here, this offensive line. As far as Goff as a fantasy quarterback, Charles Robinson had some good reports saying he's making the next step. The thing is, you have a little bit of the risk with the offense. This team still wants to remain a running team for the most part, and you don't have any rushing upside. So Goff is going around, quarterback 11, quarterback 12. That's about where he should be. Now, could he finish as high as quarterback 6 or 7? Could he have some weeks where he's a top 3, top 5 quarterback? Sure. Is he going to get into that top 3, top 5? Is he going to have 35-point weeks? I doubt it. And there are other quarterbacks like Mitchell Trubisky, Lamar Jackson, even Dak Prescott. I could see his peaks being higher than Jared Goff's peaks. And again, with that, some risk of the league catching up to McVay. But also, we do trust Sean McVay to come up with something new and to keep defenses on their heels like he did last year.
I know he doesn't know which direction the sun rises. So we can't forget that in Hard Knocks. But like, just knowing behind the scenes from sources that played with Jared Goff, past tense being the obvious one there, I have no doubt the kid's going to put in the work. And that makes me feel good, Bloom.
Yeah, and I think that the work will be direct to fixing some of the things that McVay has identified where the league caught up to him as the season went on.
Right. Let's look at the backups, which include Blake Bortles now. Okay. I mean, plenty of starting experience. Blake Bortles has always had the same bad habit. Like, he's never developed or learned or changed as a pro. Like, his same bad habits are still there. I don't know if the McVay magic touch can work for Blake Bortles.
No. I mean, look, if Goff does get hurt because Bortles can run the ball, we might look at him as an emergency play in 2 quarterback super flex leagues. But no, you're going to keep him having as little influence as possible over the outcome of the game. See, I'm just thinking of was it Jalen Ramsey who had said something to the effect of practices are a lot better now. We have to be on our stuff. We actually have to be able to, practice hard because Nick Foles is out there. So, yeah, Blake Bortles. He might be better than Sean Mannion.
Very true, and true that. Now we get to the most important part of this episode, Bloom. What's your trust level like with Todd Gurley? Our dear friend Travell Gaines, who is Gurley's trainer, came out recently, or maybe it's a couple months ago, whatever. And he was like, the knee thing isn't new. We've been dealing with this since he came out of Georgia. Like, it's not new. It cropped up last year. It's not, going to magically be 1,000,000% healthy. but he's going to deal with it. They're going to deal with it like they've always dealt with it since he came out of Georgia. But still, you see the average draft position. The fact that you can get Gurley at the turn is still like, wow, that type of talent. If he's healthy, if he hits, the backups have to come into the conversation because we're hearing more about they'll use Darrell Henderson. Like, okay, so that could change some things for Gurley. But just from a health standpoint and a trust standpoint, who do you trust? And is it Todd Gurley?
It's tough. I mean, look, if Gurley falls to the third, so the break point is, and I haven't had to make this decision yet. I almost had to make it in the Apex Expert League. Is Gurley versus like Kerryon Johnson or Devontae Freeman? Devontae Freeman has his own injury stuff, although he isn't on the veteran plan like Gurley is. And that's the thing. We're not really learning that much more about Gurley. At least he's not on the PUP, but he's going to practice kind of every other day. We're not going to see him in the preseason. He's 24. He's going to turn 25, I think tomorrow, it's early in August. That's not normal. And you think, well, if they're pacing his practice, will they pace his usage during the season? I think Charles Robinson said something like 65% of the touches, and 65% of the touches, people doing the numbers, running back 7, running back 9, whatever. And maybe even a little bit better if you're using his per touch efficiency, because he'll have more touches in the red zone, probably staying roughly intact, and fewer touches that are unlikely to result in touchdowns. So yeah, you might draft Gurley in late second, early third, and get a low running back 1. That's the best you're going to get, though. Okay, that top 5 range of outcomes no longer in play for him. So that was part of the reason to be more willing to take the risk on Gurley. We almost have confirmation that, look, in no scenario is Todd Gurley going to return to even like 90% of what he was before. Statistically, that upside's coming down. What about the downside? And that's, I still think, not being looked at, because he just looked like a player who didn't trust his body at the end of the year. What restores that, Cease? What restores the feeling of I trust my body again? I mean, maybe if you have surgery or something that fixes, like mentally, you're like, okay, that's fixed now. Nothing's going to fix what's wrong with Gurley's knee. And he might feel good to open the season, but the wear and tear. It was like a hit that he took in the Chiefs game that really sent everything into a death spiral last year. So what happens if he takes a hit on the knee in a game this year and then wakes up on Monday and it just doesn't feel right again? Then what? It doesn't make me feel good that the Rams are acting like this is a reward. Well, this is just how we treat veterans. It's not. Come on. This isn't happening because you have to. This is not happening because he's earned this. Then you have this idea of the Rams never saying he was hurt last year. They were never straight with us. Remember, trying to project those playoff games for playoff fantasy football. We had no idea. We had no idea.
Don't make us break out Todd Gurley.
Yeah.
And then CJ Anderson. Wonder, CJ, you should have known better. Like, why is he not on the team anymore? Because people will be like, what about Gurley? Oh, yeah, he's hurt.
Yeah.
You can't do that if the team is saying, what are you talking about? He's hurt.
Yeah. So that's not comforting, because I think when you project the season forward, if we do get into a murky situation with Gurley, we're not going to have guidance. The last thing is, you're thinking about the fantasy playoffs. You're thinking about December. If the Rams do well and are cruising to a division berth or a bye, they're going to rest Gurley. I mean, they're already showing you when possible they're going to rest Gurley. They're not going to push him too hard. So I think that if it was even down to the nitty gritty and I had to choose between Kerryon Johnson and Gurley, I'd probably take Kerryon Johnson. I mean, Devontae Freeman is probably right about the break point, mid-third. But I would say this: if I do end up with Gurley, I'm taking Henderson in the 6th, because Henderson can return. Remember, Chris Thompson. I'm doing the segue. Chris Thompson was a near running back 1 before he got hurt in the Chris Thompson role in Washington's offense. Mm-hmm. This is a better offense than Washington's offense. If Darrell Henderson really is in the Chris Thompson role, he can provide value with a 6th-round ADP, even if Gurley's healthy all year. But if Gurley's not healthy all year, now we're talking.
Now we are talking. To get me, Darrell Henderson, Kyle in our chat room, which is reacting to me. I love that. By the way, StreamYard, for all of us podcasters that lost Google Hangouts, StreamYard is doing the trick. So knock on wood, and let's see how this thing goes, because it looks like a really good product. By the way, Kyle says, should you draft Malcolm Brown? It's like, I'm drafting Henderson. That's it. I want the juice, Bloom. I want the juice. I want the receiver. I want the explosive nature that Henderson plays with, and just the determination and intent. I love the way that he'll just dive right in there.
And I think that Brown, sure, I would draft him in deeper leagues. But with Brown, we're looking to a path to value that only goes through Todd Gurley missing time. Or at the very least, the game time decision where they say, yeah, he tested it in warmups and it's not good. So Malcolm Brown, I think, will get mixed in. And Malcolm Brown's a good running back. It's actually, I thought he should have got paid more in free agency. He actually took a pay cut from what he was going to get as a restricted free agent when the Lions signed him to that deal. So Malcolm Brown is absolutely a player that maybe not a league winner unless Henderson also gets hurt, but a player that could matter in fantasy leagues this year. And someone that's on our waiver wire speed dial. The first time we see Todd Gurley reach over and rub his knee a little bit and seem a little uncomfortable after a play, it's like, go get Malcolm Brown on your roster, because we'll see how Gurley's feeling on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday the next week, But I think I wouldn't necessarily draft him as a handcuff. I think if you're looking at hedging, because here's the thing, maybe it would be, if Gurley misses time, a 50-50 split. But Henderson could do so much more with those touches. And see, we talked about this a couple of times in the offseason. There were runs last year. Look at the holes. And again, the two new starters on the offensive line have to click for this to be relevant. Look at the holes that CJ Anderson had. And as you pointed out, Cecil, at the end of those runs, he's gassed. He's at like 35, 40 yards downfield. Just
California King.
Yeah. Darrell Henderson's going to house those. Darrell Henderson could easily have 4 or 5 touchdowns of over 50 yards this year. So if he is getting 18 touches a game instead of 10 touches a game, then he could still be a league winner sharing with Malcolm Brown.
All right. Okay. Running backs behind that. Now we talked about
Kelly.
John Kelly, right? We should bring up John Kelly again. Deep Dynasty. Be watching him. Justin Davis, Matt Colburn as well. Preseason watch list. We're watching everybody.
Yeah, well, and I like John Kelly. I mean, some of the things that people love about David Montgomery and Devin Singletary, that contact balance, that fight, that never say die attitude on every touch, John Kelly had that at Tennessee. I was surprised he didn't get more work, but in hindsight, it was the right thing to have the professional CJ Anderson out there harvesting all the value that this offensive line and running game created. But if John Kelly doesn't make this team for some reason, I'm going to be seeing where he lands. And Houston, Tampa, hey, this guy can play.
Need running back help. Watch out for that waiver wire. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks. Kupp back, avoiding the pup. Good to go. Awesome. Woods will do his thing. Cooks already has a hamstring injury. Here we go again.
So there's a little bit of risk here in that if this offense either comes back to earth a little bit because the league figured them out and carries over, offensive line doesn't quite gel, or even the idea, and spoiler alerts, he's getting ahead to the tight ends, Gerald Everett's entering his third year. He might be a bigger factor. Darrell Henderson might be a bigger factor in this offense. So the part of the pie, nice large pie production for this offense that goes to the wide receivers might get a little smaller. So we know that it's kind of like a 1A, 1B, 1C, and ADP reflects that. Well, Cooks is giving you the best chance at the long play. Roberts and Kupp are steadier. And I think if we're looking at chemistry, and the nice thing with Kupp is no restrictions beginning of camp, fully back from the ACL, and he and Goff have that chemistry. That's his reliability security blanket guy. And Kupp is going third out of the 3. So if I'm targeting a Rams receiver, it's probably Kupp, but their ADP is about right. It all reflects like wide receiver 2, Kupp's probably down in wide receiver 3 territory because of the ACL, who will give you some wide receiver 1 weeks. And maybe the floor was high for all 3 of these guys last year. So maybe that's where things change, is the floor might be a little lower. If a few more of those targets are going to Everett or Henderson out of the backfield, then the wide receivers floor comes into play. The 3 for 30 type games do come into play. I think that I can't strongly recommend taking a Rams receiver at ADP. I can't strongly recommend not taking a Rams receiver at ADP. They're priced just about right.
And they've got some interesting receivers in the group behind the big 3, including guys like Austin Prohl, Mike Thomas there, Josh Reynolds there. You want to talk about JoJo Natson? Like, you're going to recognize some names, especially if you play in deeper dynasty leagues. Like, I want to still see what Josh Reynolds and Mike Thomas can do, and what's Austin Prohl up to these days. Like, okay, some new names, but some names you might be already familiar with if you play in a deep enough league.
And look, the Rams passing game is good enough that when we see Josh Reynolds get in there, we're going to look at him as a potential start. He's got the experience, size, downfield ability going into his third year. If Brandon Cooks does miss some time with that hamstring to see how he's meshing with the ones. But yeah, you have Ricky Pearl's son, right? Austin Pearl. You're going to be a good route runner. The other Mike Thomas, a tale of two Mike Thomases, Cease. One getting $100 million. The other trying to make the team. So it hasn't quite gone as well for the other Mike Thomas, but he continues to hang around on this roster. So any Rams receiver that could get playing time in case of injury, someone will want to know. Out after Reynolds, we'll see who can win a roster spot for them.
All right, let's get to those aforementioned tight ends like you were talking about, Bloom. And there is Gerald Everett up at the top. Tyler Higbee's got some skill as receiver, certainly. Maybe some sort of tight end committee, but Everett's the guy to focus on here.
He is. And I think just there's tight end so deep that you're not drafting Gerald Everett, but we definitely could be talking about him on the week 2 waiver wire show or at some point after that. He's in his 3rd year. He was a 2nd round pick. Pure receiving tight end. I mean, he's evolved into a 2-way tight end, but this could be the year that he has a good enough camp in preseason for them to say, well, we've got to use him more too. And look, it's in the Rams' interest to be able to attack you from as many angles as possible. So if a Henderson and Everett are up to it, then that's part of the way that you keep the league from catching up to you. Is now they have something new to catch up to. Now they have new looks that they have to defend, because Gerald Everett could be one of the more dangerous receiving tight ends. So unless we start hearing that overwhelming drumbeat, which we haven't heard yet about Everett, you're probably not going to draft him, but you're going to be open to him being a big factor because this is a really good pass offense and he's got a lot of talent.
Well, a lot of waiver wire speed dial here, guys, right? I mean, Josh Reynolds waiver wire speed dial, Gerald Everett waiver wire speed dial,
Malcolm Brown, and it's because of the quality of the offense. Because we saw last year with C.J. Anderson and Reynolds at times that it's a plug and play offense. And Tyler Higbee's good enough to start. So it wouldn't surprise me if Tyler Higbee goes somewhere in free agency next year and starts and is a fantasy relevant tight end. He's good. It just happens to be that he's in an offense with a lot of good players.
If I was starting a Fight Club fantasy team, I'd want Tyler Higbee on my side.
Yeah, and Steve Smith, 1st round pick, Steve Smith.
Of course, always and forever and ever and ever and ever. And that is a wrap for the Rams here on the preseason watch list. It is 32 teams, episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, going through the NFC West and stopping in San Francisco up next, where Kyle Shanahan, how hot is that seat? But Jimmy Garoppolo, a make or break year for him. Does he make or break your fantasy team? That's next.
Agua.
You're getting agua? Okay. This is a live show, people. See, look at Bloom with his hair down. Live show, everybody. I can't believe Bloom sits on that chair. Like, get you a nice, comfy, soft chair. He sits on that hardwood chair. Your ass must hurt when we're done with these shows, Bloom. See, you can't hear anything I'm saying right now, so maybe you can. I don't know. Did you hear that?
I just heard you say you probably can't hear what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, you sit on that chair. Like the other day you got up, because I'm always wondering what's behind you.
Yeah.
What's he doing back there?
Right.
Like, and then I saw your chair. I was like, your ass must hurt after you do these shows. Like, it you.
Yeah, I know. I have that big office chair, but I doesn't want to roll it around on the floor and things like that. And it's good. I'm 44 now, so I've got to, firm up a little bit, I guess. I don't know. But
what's that?
Yeah, I know. This is gonna be. It's funny. We put out to the people. Can we get help with the Google Hangouts? We like help so that I lived into my 50s, please. No, we love it.
Right. Yeah. Stacy and I are going to New York City so she can do a Peloton class in person at the studio, and she's like, "You can do it with me." I'm like, "I don't want to die." Like, me on a spin bike. Okay.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to happen. We'll say that. Anyway, Sam loves our Ween intro. I used fantasy at the beginning of the Panthers. And that's the little, if you listen on iTunes, like we try to match the music with the town or just kind of the theme. And then at the end of every show, Bloom, and here's the behind the scenes, Bloom never listens to our show twice. He does the show and it's like a walk-off home run.
It's like a butterfly. You let it fly away, yeah.
Right. But at the end of every show, I put like a little clip in, either from us, some sort of outtake, or some clip from a movie that maybe either I'm watching or has to do with. So there's the Audible is layered, Bloom.
Yeah. It's a many splendored thing, and it continues to be. And I hope I really did debate whether like is it shoulder? Am I showing too much shoulder? I'm modest. So far so good.
You got the hair down. You got the
Yeah.
Rip Curl shirt on.
It's the surfing snowman. Get it? We're all surfing snowmen. We're all melting, just trying to catch a wave and enjoy it while we can.
Yeah. What did we learn? That's the point of life. What did we learn? So let's do this. Let's do the point of the 49ers in 3, 2, 1. Here we go with the 49ers and the preseason watch list. It's 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on this show. The 49ers means Jimmy Garoppolo talk. I don't think anyone can question his talent. As Mark Schlereth told me when he talked to Jimmy Garoppolo last year, the most he learned from Tom Brady, the most important thing was quarterback is a lifestyle. Okay, cool. How about staying healthy as a lifestyle, right? We were just talking about that off the air, Bloom. Like, how about staying healthy as a lifestyle for Jimmy Garoppolo? If he does that, what does that mean for fantasy GMs? What does it mean for the 49ers offense overall, which we've been waiting? I do believe Kyle Shanahan has the same record in the last 2 years as Vance Joseph. If not, it's very close. And Vance Joseph got fired. We're back. And now he's with the Cardinals as their DC. Like, okay, Kyle, you better hope Jimmy stays healthy. What's that look like?
Yeah, and it is, I suppose, in the background, a sort of make or break year for the Shanahan-Lynch regime. But it's exciting for fantasy because we've talked about this a few times in the offseason season. What this offense was able to do with Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard, this was still a viable NFL offense. Very few NFL teams would be a viable NFL offense when their backup is in. And the 49ers did that with not very good backups. I mean, Nick Mullins may look back and say he's a pretty solid quarterback, but still, this is something very impressive. How good could this offense be with Jimmy Garoppolo? Pretty good. And they also have offensive line is not a problem here. Obviously, they've got a very strong offensive line. Joe Staley, future Hall of Famer, maybe. You also have the addition of Deebo Samuel. You have Dante Pettis should be healthier this year. Marquise Goodwin should be healthier this year. Hopefully, the backfield will be healthier. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. Again, you plug and play this offense. But with Jimmy Garoppolo at the helm, a lot more upside could be unlocked. So this is also an offense that's going to be better than last year. We don't know how much better, but that's usually a sign that there can be some good fantasy picks in this offense.
Yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo, just stay healthy. If Nick Mullins comes in, they'll run the show. If CJ Beathard does, well, all bets are off.
Yeah, and it's not as bad. Again, we've already seen a test of this. If Garoppolo gets hurt, it's not as bad as it's going to be with some other teams. There's something like George Kittle. I mean, George Kittle was fine, more than fine last year with the backup quarterback. And again, with so many injuries, Dante Pettis had his moments last year with backup quarterbacks. So we're not as worried. Really quick, I realized I didn't even give a fantasy take on Garoppolo. Garoppolo has some upside. We don't know how good he can be in this Kyle Shanahan offense. Does he have upside to match the running quarterbacks? Probably not. So he's going about where he should. He's probably more in this day and age of quarterback scoring, a waiver wire quarterback or a quarterback that you play only in matchups as a streamer. But the quality of the offense could make me eat my words, especially if another thing is, the defense isn't as bad as Arizona or Kansas City. But depending on what's going on, it might not be that good.
Right. And let's look at the game script for what this team wants to be offensively, which could include a lot of those running backs. Now we're watching the news wired, footballguys.com. Jerick McKinnon is still on the PUP list, even though I think today, didn't Shanahan say maybe today he's going to get back? Anyway, we're recording on August 2nd, just so everybody knows that. All right, well, they've got Tevin Coleman who comes over. They got Matt Breida who can do some things. Let's talk about what this backfield looks like when McKinnon is healthy, because then you'd have Coleman, Breida, and McKinnon all vying for snaps.
This one's really hard to crack because you have Tevin Coleman, who's likely to enter the season as the starter. He's the healthiest. And we know Kyle Shanahan's had a thing for Coleman going back to when Shanahan was in Atlanta. But I don't see in any scenario where it makes sense to give Tevin Coleman 20 touches a game. You don't want to just burn through these running backs. So here's a way to preserve these running backs. You maybe have one doing half of the work, the other doing 40% of the work, the third one sprinkled in, and preserving them all season. Just running one to the ground and then plugging the next one in and running him into the ground, and the next one and running him into the ground. Well, that's how you end up with Raheem Mostert as a league winner in December. So remember, I'm gonna handle all these guys together because of Matt Waldman's minions take, right? These are the minions. They're wonderful. Exactly. Every time I say that, you say banana, and it always makes me laugh. I love it. We're gonna get caught in a loop sometime where I'm just gonna say minions, and you're gonna say we're just gonna keep doing that and forget we're doing the show. RotoWare, get the San Francisco running backs as minions. Get that out there. So
banana.
So if he really does come out, if Coleman is like a lead back, then Coleman's going to look great for the first few weeks of the season as a 6th or 7th round pick. He's going to be a running back 2 with running back 1 weeks as a 6th or 7th round pick, but he's not going to last. And then if they use Breida that way, and I think it's Breida second man up. So if you're going to take a San Francisco running back in the second half of your draft, it's Breida, not McKinnon, because McKinnon's not right yet. He had a flare up with his knee. I'm not 100% sure he'll make the team if he's not ready to contribute at the beginning of the season, because he's going to get like $3.7 million. McKinnon, I think, is more waiver wire fodder. I think it's going to be more of a 2-back approach, and that third back, probably McKinnon, might not be active on game days. So you're going to pay $3.7 million for a guy that is an in case of emergency break glass guy, because Raheem Mostert, and we want to make sure his forearm's okay. I think he had a setback or 2 with it in the off season, so it slowed his recovery. But Mostert showed us when he was in, there's not a drop off really to him. He's not significantly less talented or able than Breida. We didn't really get to see McKinnon in this offense. I think Coleman could be good, but he's not going to just so blow away the competition. Breida looked like a really good running back who really understood how to run in the scheme last year. So Mostert's the guy who contributes on special teams, and he's going to be up every week. So you may have a 2-back approach with that third back down. So there's a lot of questions here. Most of them revolve around who's healthy and can they stay healthy.
I just want RotoWare to come out with a shirt that says like fantasy football is, blanking awesome.
Yeah.
And then like a hashtag sorry Joe.
Yeah. The sorry Joe. The
black-eyed Joe right here in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We should be doing some sort of deal with them, because there's so many t-shirts, Clarity drink and so many other things. But I'm really happy. I think RotoWare is doing excellent as a company, by the way, and being agile and being able to get these things out there quickly to the people and what's on our mind. I salute them for what they're doing.
Find, avoid, and fill it, right? I mean, that's kind of the key in all of this that we like to do. So anyway, we've burned through the running backs.
Mm-hmm.
I know, unless you had some Austin
Jeffrey
Walter
Wilson
thoughts. Right. Jeffrey Wilson. Yeah. I mean, okay, preseason watch list. Wilson showed some skill, Bloom. I'll be checking out.
He shows he can hang in the NFL. But there was a void, at the wide receiver position. At least they saw a void enough to spend a second-round pick on a wide receiver.
Yes, they did on a bully. Debo. What by punk?
Yeah.
That's good. That guy, hide your chain. Bloom, you don't wear a chain, do you?
No,
hide your chain. My grandmother gave me that chain. Yeah, so there you go. Debo Samuel there, the big bully, run off the catch guy, second round pick for the 49ers. Dante Pettis, again, they've been spending assets, second round pick in last year's draft. And Pettis to me always reminded me of Deshaun Jackson, my man Mike Pritchard. Loved Dante Pettis in college at Washington. He certainly got that speed. And as you said earlier, Bloom, showed those flashes. So let's talk about Debo and Dante. I kind of like that, Debo and Dante. And then I guess throw in Jordan Matthews if you want. But those Debo and Dante are the two I'm watching closely.
Yeah, and I'll throw in a third. I'll throw in Marquise Goodwin. But let's start with Dante Pettis.
Love that guy.
Yeah, I do. What was he, with like a tiger or something this offseason? He's trying to do a Siegfried and Roy impression or something. The Simpsons predicted that was going to happen, by the way. Siegfried and Roy getting mauled by them.
They're time travelers. That's what they are.
They really are. Pettis, I mentioned Kiki Cutie and I mentioned Marquise.
I have to interrupt you because I'm
please.
sorry, because DFS Donovan in the chat room said Bloom is too crunchy to wear a chain.
I am. I'm too crunchy for a lot of things, but guilty as charged. Look, Dante Pettis belongs in that upside tier that starts around like Christian Kirk and even actually starts around like Chris Godwin. These guys who could greatly exceed what you pay for them in drafts. Kiki Cutie, Curtis Samuel, Marcus Valdez-Scantling, and so on. Dante Pettis is absolutely in there because the dude, as far as separation, he's on it. He just needs to stay healthy. He's a little fragile. But the chemistry was there with everybody last year because he gets open, he can get downfield. So he should be the first one off the board. I see with Deebo Samuel, I saw that he was maybe dropping some weight. They were working him out in the slot, but they still have Trent Taylor. The reality is, I think if there's a number one, it would be Pettis. And then after that, it may be some mix and match with Deebo and Trent Taylor doing some stuff in the slot, and then Jalen Hurd, who can do some tight end, who can do some running back. They spent a 3rd round pick on him, so Kyle has plans for him. Jordan Matthews might make the team. This is one of those teams. Spoiler for the next part of this takes. Some good wide receivers are going to be released from this team. There's just no way they can keep them all. But Marquise Goodwin, I want to talk about because at this time last year, every report out of San Francisco said the same thing. He's the number 1 receiver. And then he couldn't stay healthy. Now, the reports this offseason has been where they're cutting back his snaps to keep him healthy. So now he's just persona non grata for fantasy. I'm getting him in the 15th, 16th, 17th round of drafts. Look at Deshaun Jackson, folks. If a wide receiver is playing 60% of the snaps, but on some significant percentage of those snaps, they're running go routes, and there's very few cornerbacks that can keep with them, only 1 or 2 of those plays have to work for that receiver to be fantasy relevant. So the idea that Marquise Goodwin is only playing 50, 60% of the snaps, so he can't be fantasy relevant, wrong. If we know that he and Garoppolo have tremendous chemistry, probably the best chemistry of anybody on this team, if we're looking at the receiver quarterback combinations, as long as Goodwin stays healthy, he's going to be fantasy relevant this year.
Yeah, Goodwin's the 0-0 guy on the roulette board. That's what he is. Like, just has to hit once, and they can pay off nicely. Gambling is illegal at Bushwood, sir. And Goodwin is the player. Trent Taylor, I mean, he's Nick Williams, right? He's the underneath guy. They do have some players behind Kendrick Bourne, new free agent Malik Henry, Sean Poindexter, standing on the wall like you was Poindexter. Yeah, he's out there now. So preseason watch list behind Goodwin and Taylor.
Sure.
Couple names.
And Taylor had back issues last year, and he's healthier. So I think they like him, and he's going to play a role on this team. We know Samuel, Pettis, Goodwin, and Hurd are absolutely going to make the team. Taylor's probably going to make the team. There's one more spot. Kendrick Bourne has shown he can play on an NFL field. He can hang.
Yes.
I don't know if he'll be hanging with this team this year because of this numbers game. Same thing with Jordan Matthews. I still think that Richie James is the guy here. And I didn't see that much difference in overall ability between Richie James and Dante Pettis when they were drafted. Now, Pettis has just shown that he's hitting along a best case scenario path for his career. But Richie James, when he's gotten opportunities, he's popped. He's flashed. He may not get that many opportunities. If he doesn't make this team, I will be watching very closely to see where he lands. And I still think this is a guy that's going to defy expectations. He defied expectations to make the team as a 7th rounder last year. He made some plays last year. Coming into this year saying, man, he's probably going to be the odd man out. He's making plays in practice again. Go to Twitter. You can see some of the routes he's running. They're beautiful. He's a beautiful player. You're going to hear, he's the kind of guy that the Steelers should have drafted. He reminds me of the Antonio Brown, Emmanuel Sanders, Deontay Thompson is the latest in the line this year. That's the kind of guy he is. Not the biggest guy, maybe not necessarily the fastest in a straight line. Understands how to play his guy. Understands a really tough, hard-nosed guy at the catch point, after the catch. I still love Richie James. I can't quit him, Cecil.
Yeah, now you're distracting me talking about Deontay Johnson, but anyway.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. How about you distract me with some George Kittle talk? Because, well, that was out of nowhere last year. Now, 200 of those yards came against the Broncos, but still, George Kittle's a weapon. Everyone's excited about George Kittle. He'll be going off the board right after Travis Kelce. What's he do for an encore this year? And again, kind of the overarching theme here, Bloom. Jimmy Garoppolo's healthy. What does that mean for double Kittle?
Yeah.
More Kittle.
And it's kind of like a glass half full, glass half empty. Because the glass half empty view on Kittle is, well, if all these receivers, you add Samuel to the mix, you get Trent Taylor back, you have a healthier Pettis, a healthier Goodwin. There's just less for Kittle. How much of Kittle's big breakout season was, well, just that was the guy that the offense had. This is kind of like the Jared Cook take in Oakland last year. But Kittle's still going to be a top 3 tight end. And I would take him over Zach Ertz. But I do think if you are intent on taking one of the top 3 tight ends, the answer is Kelce in the first, second, more than I want Kittel in the second, third, or Ertz in the third. And once we get to that level, Ertz in the third, or maybe even Kittel in the second, if Kittle's there in the third, then you have to forego those running backs in the third round, because then you can get OJ Howard in the fourth, fifth, and so on down the line. So I like Kittel a lot. I just think that if you don't take Kelsey, who I think has a chance to lap the field at tight end this year, then you're probably looking at the guy who has a chance to crash the top 4 or 5 that's outside of it, or in Howard's case, outside of the top 3, but can crash it this year. So I love Kittel as a player. The offense could get better. He could get a little more efficient on his targets, which would be difficult. There'll be better targets from Garoppolo, you would think, in an offense that's putting defenses in more difficult positions to defend them. But I do think he'll get fewer targets, and it'll be tougher for him to match what he did last year.
They got Levine Toilolo. They've got Niles Paul, who's always that tease, like, man, if you could just stay healthy. And I think those days are past now. But rookie Caden Smith, Garrett Selleck out there tying his shoes. Like, okay, they got some names to watch behind Kittel.
Yeah, and Caden Smith is an interesting upside guy on the Stanford tight end. Niles Paul, the converted receiver. I'm glad you brought up the shoes, though, because if we were going to talk about a tight end who really might have trouble tying his shoes, it might be Levine Toilolo, both with the flexibility and how tall he is. But he'll contribute as a blocking tight end who occasionally can catch another Stanford tight end, I think. It's all about the Bay Area.
Yeah, Toilolo, Stanford.
Bay Area.
Just grab Austin Hooper.
Yeah.
Maybe that's who they think Smith is. You know what I mean? Kyle was there with Austin and Lammey. Anyway. All right, that's a wrap for the 49ers here on the preseason watch list. It is 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on this show, wrapping up this division, of course, up in the beautiful Northwest in Seattle. Russell Wilson, his teammates like him now because they're all new. And we know they're going to run the ball. But is there a new, big, strong weapon that fantasy GMs need to add to their receiving core like Seattle did? That's next. I was trying to think of it like a David Boston reference. Do you remember David Boston? Do you want the new David Boston? Minus the juice. You got your water?
Oh, yeah, I do. Thank you.
Okay. You good to go? We're ready to wrap this thing up?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Cool. 3, 2, 1. I probably just look like Napoleon Dynamite taking a swig there. Anyway, 3, 2, 1. Russell Wilson going to run around and make plays for Seattle. He's going to make plays for your fantasy team. And as we kick off the Seahawks edition of the preseason watch list here on the Audible, 32 teams, 32 episodes. Say it with me. Every skill position player that you want to know about. Damn. I like when the audience gets to say stuff with me, Bloom. We'll be playing some Public Enemy pretty soon. Can't wait for that. Anyway, let's talk about Russell Wilson. Again, nothing really new here with Russell Wilson. New weapons. We're going to get to DK Metcalf, all that. But, let Russell Wilson do his thing. Let him run around, make plays. And for fantasy GMs, he's a known quantity in this year where, say it with me, everybody, quarterback is so damn deep.
Yeah, well, look, here's the good news if you want to talk about Wilson. And Wilson has so much respect that he's still going more like quarterback 7 or 8, I think. Because if he's quarterback 10, 11, 12 now, I'm excited. Maybe even at 7 or 8, I'm thinking about it. Because not having Doug Baldwin doesn't really hurt him that much because he barely had Doug Baldwin last year. He was so efficient last year. Low volume, scary. The Seattle wants to run as much as they can. But he adds DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett's going to probably be operating out of the slot more. They have also, we'll see about David Moore coming along and Jerron Brown. But I think that's enough for Russell Wilson. If the volume would be there, will the volume be there? Well, this team traded away Frank Clark in the offseason. Then their best pass rusher, an interior lineman expected to take up some of the slack, Jerron Reed, suspended for the first 6 games. They have Ezekiel Anza. Will he be healthy for week 1? Will he stay healthy? This team has very little pass rush to speak of. Then you look at their schedule for the 6 weeks that Reed is out. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, you've got the Saints, you've got the Cardinals, you've got the Rams, you've got the Browns. That sounds like a bunch of high-scoring games to me. That sounds like games that even if they only wanted Russell Wilson to throw the ball 20 times, he's going to throw it 20 times in the first half. He's going to be more involved as a runner. Because that was the other thing with Wilson. For everything he did last year, he was less productive as a runner last year. I think you could see no matter what their best laid plans are, these are, hey, Russell, go out there and do your thing and win the game for us. And he's like, okay. And he'll win fantasy games for you too. And then if it does return to him throwing the ball 20, 25 times a game where he can still get you 20 points, he can still throw 3 touchdowns, 200 yards, then you may look elsewhere once things return to quote unquote normal. But the early normal for this offense might be high scoring games and Russell Wilson carrying the team.
Yeah, they might want to be more conservative like they've been, but I don't know how they can in certain contests. So advantage fantasy GMs because you'll get the Russell Wilson that you really want. Yeah. Russell Wilson can hand off all day and be efficient and be conservative, and they can win a lot of games that way. But the Russell Wilson you want is the guy that's slinging it a little bit more.
What you want is what they're doing with Kyler Murray in Arizona. You know, imagine if Russell Wilson was in Arizona, he'd be the number 2 fantasy quarterback.
Blooming might be number 1.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm daydreaming. Like, oh, imagine this. All right, let's talk about Paxton Lynch.
As I say, go from that back to reality.
That's reality of, Paxton's tall.
Hey, did you see how much the Fortnite kid won? Like $3 million. Maybe he can still make a lot of money in his career yet.
Yeah, maybe. Right. Yeah, esports is the future. Like it truly is. I've got maybe some big news on that coming up locally. Ooh. At least me and Emmanuel Sanders. But anyway, let's talk about Paxton. Let's talk about Geno. Pete Carroll says there's no clear separation. They have, one of the, if not the worst backup quarterback situation in the league because Paxton doesn't care enough. He needs to care more. And it's not a tools thing. The tools are there with the kid. It's not like he's 6'7" and he's Bambi on ice when he goes to run. No, he can run. Paxton can get out of his own way and really run. Paxton's got a big arm. Paxton doesn't have the dedication that you need to be a pro quarterback. I think he liked the idea of being a first-round pick, but didn't like the pressure of being a first-round pick.
That sounds like me. That's what happened to Bloom, yeah.
So here's a guy that, I was told by sources, like, it really bothered him that fans would boo him. It's like, are you not ready for the pro game? Anyway, Paxton's an odd dude. I remember when he signed with Seattle, I actually saw him at DIA, and we've been plenty friendly in the past. He gets on the train. We lock eyes, right? It's like a rom-com. We lock eyes. He freaking puts his hood over his head and like gets on his phone and turns away from me. It's like, Paxton, dude, it's not like I'm going to bag on you and be like, where'd you go, buddy? What scrub team picked you up? Playing in Canada yet? Like, anyway, let's not turn this into a Paxton episode. Preseason watch list we'll be watching. Don't be surprised if Geno Smith beats him out.
Yeah, and we won't see either of them. I mean, we won't see whoever the backup is. Russell Wilson, very durable, and again, they do a really good job of keeping him out of harm's way. Another thing to mention here is this offensive line has come together now. Dwayne Brown, speaking of holdouts, turning into trades. Trent Williams' situation, DJ Fluker has gelled with this offensive line, and Justin Britt, Mike Iupati. So they've done a good job. To previous Seahawks preseason watch list, like, oh, that offensive line. The same thing we're saying about Deshaun Watson, not saying that anymore.
And Russell Wilson somehow, someway stayed healthy through that. Because it used to be like we'd say about the Colts. And now Andrew Luck is broken, and the Colts are like, we fixed it. Right, we totally fixed it. It's like, it's too bad Luck's already broken. Anyway, let's move to the running backs. San Diego State Aztec that I was like, he's good. I didn't think he was first round good for Rashad Penny. He's there with Chris Carson. How's that battle shape up this year?
I don't think it's a battle. I mean, I think that Rashad Penny can take up his role and Mike Davis's role from last year, but I think Chris Carson might take up a little bit of that Mike Davis role too. So Chris Carson, people might not have noticed in December, he was a running back 1. He was a top 10, top 12 fantasy running back. He good. Okay. He's good in the passing game too, which Rashad Penny more of a work in progress in the passing game. So after the running backs dry up in the early 4th round, I think you're going to see Chris Carson start to come up into the 4th round if he's not there already and be in that mix with guys like Leonard Fournette and Derrick Henry and Marlon Mack. I think that he deserves to be there. I think he's the clear lead back in this team. In no scenario does Rashad Penny overtake him. Forget about the draft capital. Forget that Chris Carson was a 7th rounder. Forget that Penny was a 1st rounder. Watch him play. Chris Carson's good. He's going to remain good. No problems with his knee coming into camp. No restrictions. Was running with the first team first day of practice. So Chris Carson should be treated as a starting running back in a good offense, in a good running game. 4th round sounds like maybe even a slight bargain if he stays healthy. Maybe he should be in that group of running backs with running back 1 upside that you can get in the 3rd or 4th round. Penny is still a fine play in the 8th or 9th round. If Carson gets hurt, which has happened each of the first 2 years, then Penny getting the bulk of the workload will make him a useful fantasy player. But it's easy to forget that when Carson missed time last year, Mike Davis got snaps in the 80s and Penny was down in the 30s. He was the backup. Okay, so I think you might see another running back mixed in if Carson mixes time this year. I don't necessarily know if Rashad Penny is a true league winner type unless Chris Carson goes down for the year.
And then who is that mixed in with him? Because
Right.
J.D. McKissick is there, certainly got that electric toes, right? Electricity to his game. It's always funny when Pete Carroll has to talk about C.J. Prosise. It's like, but Travis Homer, that's the kid. And this team's already been identifying late round talent. We just went on and on about Chris Carson. But Travis Homer, kid from the U, very intent on 201 pounds, but still that balance, the agility, intent running style that I certainly appreciate. Homer in the preseason watch list is certainly a name to remember.
Yes, and you think about who might match up and pair up with a Penny in a Carson going down scenario. You're right. The receiving back, the scat back, McKissick or Travis Homer. We'll see if CJ Prosise can stay healthy. But I also want to mention Bo Scarborough here, Cease, because both from a measurable standpoint and a stylistic standpoint, is there that much difference between Bo Scarborough and Derrick Henry?
Not really.
I mean, so wouldn't it make sense that and now we'll see if Scarborough can make the team, and maybe he's on another roster and they won't be able to get him. But if he does make the team, or if he's on speed dial because he hasn't made another team if they cut him, wouldn't it just make sense if Carson were to go down for them to keep Penny in a sort of 50% of the snaps role and have Scarborough come in and run fools over? Because Scarborough is a guy for a team that wants to cram the ball down your throat. Makes a lot of sense. I'm really excited to see him in the preseason.
Well, let's move to the wide receivers where the conversation isn't about Tyler Lockett, who, if he ever could play fully up to his potential, there's even more there with Tyler Lockett. I don't think Tyler Lockett has peaked in this league. I think Tyler Lockett in this situation where Russell Wilson might have to throw the ball a little bit more because the defense stinks. This is Tyler Lockett in time for me. And we've been waiting, Bloom. Yeah. And I know that when he came out of Kansas State, we saw him at the Senior Bowl, and I was like, there's a little bit of Antonio Brown. I'm not saying he's Antonio Brown, but that part of his game, like, it's still untapped. There's still more there with Tyler Lockett. And to me, Bloom, let's bring in DK Metcalf here. I'm way more excited about Lockett than I'm about Metcalf. And it's not about Metcalf's shortcomings as a route runner and rawness as a receiver. It's about Lockett and that still untapped potential. So let's talk about this duo now. The big, strong rookie in DK Metcalf and the little guy we've seen, but we haven't seen his best yet, Tyler Lockett.
Last year, Tyler Lockett broke a lot of models that say targets are important, that say you have to get this many targets to matter in fantasy football. I think he had 71 targets last year, and he was a solid wide receiver too. And it wasn't even, because I say, well, what about week to week? Week to week, he was still finding a way to get a long play or a long touchdown most weeks, even if he was only getting 4 or 5 targets, which on average, that's what he was getting. This number has to go up this year with Doug Baldwin out, with Lockett working more from the slot. And again, for 6 games, no Jerron Reed, maybe more high-scoring game scripts. Lockett's there in the 4th or 5th round. And folks, if he was a mid-low wide receiver 2 last year, what's he going to be this year? Could he be wide receiver 1? I mean, we saw Doug Baldwin have a stretch with Russell Wilson where he was a top 5, top 8 fantasy receiver, partially because of his red zone prowess. But Lockett can do that, and Lockett can give you the vertical. So Lockett's a really exciting play at ADP. He's one of those guys who could just blow away his ADP. DK Metcalf, maybe not as much. And there's also a question here, Cecil. They come out early in camp, and it's more Jerron Brown and David Moore. Now we're seeing some more DK Metcalf sprinkled in. I do think, I trust Seattle staff enough that no matter what, no matter how ready or not ready DK Metcalf looks, he's going to be out there on passing downs. How could you have DK Metcalf on your roster and not just have him on the field to put fear into the defense? Because what's good about DK Metcalf's fantasy profile is if Tyler Lockett showed, hey, he can be a wide receiver 2 with 71 targets last year. Well, DK Metcalf can be relevant in any week that you think he might get 3 or 4 targets because of how good those Russell Wilson deep targets are. And that's going to be the game for DK Metcalf. Is good luck trying. So I think of DK Metcalf. He just has to stay healthy. This is that guy that gets you scared. Imagine that you're like a really good 5'11", 5'10" corner, and you even have the speed, which not many do, to run stride for stride with Metcalf. Now the ball's in the air. Isn't your instinct to just like grab him and pull him down or something? I mean, how are you going to stop him from catching that ball? He's so big. He's so athletic. Maybe not in a 3-cone drill, but when the ball's in the air and then tackling him after, Metcalf is going to be a nightmare. Maybe he's not going to be a nightmare when it comes to creating separation on a curl route or something. But when it actually matters, when the ball's in the air, when he has the ball in his hands, good luck. 3 for 80 and a touchdown might be a more standard line from him. So 10th round and on, I'm very interested to see what DK Metcalf's going to do because he's a deep ball receiver with maybe the best deep ball quarterback this side of Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball.
Yeah, and don't ask him to run a dig.
Yeah.
Don't. That's and here's the thing. Like, he's terrible at throttling down to change direction. He leans when he's going to break in his route. We all know that. But I'm not one of those people because of Metcalf's unique ability. And as you mentioned, Russell Wilson and that deep ball, I'm not one of those people like, well, he's got to run the full route tree to be fantasy relevant. No, he doesn't. He can run a 9 route all day and Wilson will hit him.
Yeah.
Then get to the red zone. He's the biggest guy. Box out a couple of tiny little weenie guys and boom, you got it. Touchdown. Do I have to say sorry, Joe, for weenie?
No, not unless you're using it in a different way.
Leave that one alone. Let's go to David Moore, Jerron Brown. You already mentioned them. I kind of want to push a little further down the list because you have so many names like Gary Jennings, Jazz Ferguson, dude.
Yeah.
Jazz Ferguson, ladies and gentlemen. Like, this is preseason watch list, and while I'm excited about Lockett and certainly going to be watching Metcalf, you get a Jazz and Ferguson on the field. You get a Gary Jennings on the field. Now I'm really locked into what the Seattle wide receiver core can look like.
This is a really fun group of also Rands, kind of. I mean, Jerron Brown's got a lot of ability, and he's running some with the starters. David Moore was making some tremendous plays. And David Moore, if DK Metcalf goes down, pick up David Moore. Basically, David Moore slots into that role in the offense, I think, where he gets single coverage and gets a chance to make big plays downfield. I think this team should keep 6 receivers and try to stash 2 more on the practice squad because of all the names here. Gary Jennings, highly productive, versatile receiver. And again, if injury strike and pushes him into the top 3, he's interesting. Amara Darboh is trying to make the team. I liked his game, real solid game at Michigan. He just needs to stay healthy. But then I got to mention John Ursua from, I think from Hawaii. He actually fits in that Doug Baldwin role. He's that guy who can, in the slot, create lots of separation underneath and can make some things happen after the catch. And then Jazz Ferguson. And I say if DK Metcalf goes down, then look to David Moore. But Jazz Ferguson is the one who looks like DK Metcalf. He's the one who's big, who's fast. Does he start out he's LSU or was going to go to LSU? I mean, he's that caliber of athlete. And the measurables were there at his pro day. So absolutely, preseason watch list. This is going to be, maybe it's not going to be fun to watch Paxton Lynch cease. And maybe that, because that's the thing. I'm like, ooh, I'm excited to watch Ferguson. But who's going to be throwing it's just Paxton Lynch. Maybe I'm not as excited to watch him in the preseason. But this is an exciting group of receivers all the way down to the 8th, 9th, 10th guy for Seattle.
Exciting group of receivers, Bloom. I don't want to say boring group of tight ends.
Yeah.
Maybe like halfway interesting because they got Jacob Hollister. Now, I may have thought this when AJ Derby left New England, like, why would they get rid of AJ Derby? And it's like, oh, wait, okay, can't play. But Jacob Hollister was always a name we talk about on the preseason watch list. And Wyoming Cowboys, baby. Like, hey, he was one of those guys that Josh Allen lost, right? Yeah. When people are like, why did Josh Allen's numbers fall? Oh, because he lost Tanner Gentry, because he lost Jacob Hollister, because he lost Brian Hill. Like, you want to know why Josh Allen's numbers fell at Wyoming? That's why. So he's got talent, but the Patriots, especially after Gronk retiring to trade away to get rid of he was a trade, right? To get rid of Jacob Hollister.
Yeah.
Like, what
It
the
was
hell?
odd. It was odd.
What the hell, bro? And you got Will Dissly and Nick Vannett
Yeah.
there too.
And Vannett and Disley, I mean, they can make some plays where like the defense forgets about them, which might happen a few times.
That's what happened to Dissly against the Broncos.
Yeah. It could happen, but this is not going to be a place where you're going to have consistent fantasy relevance. Although Hollister is a pure receiving tight end, and like you said, it was odd that they gave him away for couch cushion change, but they did, and he's making plays in camp, so that's something interesting, more for deep dynasty tight end premium leagues, monitoring him in the preseason. Again, just hope they cover your eyes if it's Paxton Lynch. So Hollister's the name here, and Tyrone Swoop's still, former option quarterback for UT, seeing if he can make that conversion to tight end. It'd be interesting, but that's probably all it's going to be. It's interesting to watch in the preseason.
Well, that is a wrap for the Seattle Seahawks here on the preseason watch list, and we tie up a bow on the NFC West. Now, he's Sigmund Bloom. His caption says Bloom today.
Yeah.
But he's Sigmund Bloom. With your hair down, buddy, you need to have your hair down a little bit more. Fluffing the locks there of Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on Twitter for more fluffy locks at Sigmund Bloom. The show is at the Audible. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying thank you very much for watching, and thank you StreamYard, because this is
pretty good.
This is pretty good. Very good product. Again, if you're a podcaster or a content creator and you lost Google Hangouts like we all did, StreamYard is that number one option. It's a basic clone of Hangouts. So, hey, here we go. And we'll figure out the camera angles, Bloom, because I think we can do it the other way, but I didn't want to click on too much and, all that kind of stuff. But we made it. We made it. Thanks for subscribing on iTunes. By the way, on YouTube, it really does help us grow the channel. To support the show, it's as simple as throwing in a like and throwing in a comment in the comment section. The chat room stuff shows up, but not in the comment section. It'll get it more in recommended videos. Like, YouTube's really weird about stuff. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then, of course, comment on our videos. It really does help the channel, and we really appreciate you guys for doing that. So he's Sigmund. I'm Cecil. Everyone, thanks for watching and listening. Stay tuned, and as always, stay frosty.